Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 19 of Ultimate Exotics, the review series for Gran Turismo 6's selection of the top-of-the-line supercars. Now, if you were to say to someone who is a fan of cars but not necessarily an in-depth petrol head, the term supercar, what would probably come to their mind? Well, if they know anything at all about supercars and exotic vehicles, there are a few criteria which would probably pop up in their head, such as mid-engined, having a V12, being Italian, that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying that is the specific criteria of a supercar, of course, but for many people, those are the kind of things that come to mind. And from that point of view, this is pretty much the quintessential supercar. It's Italian, it's a Lambo, it's mid-engined, and it's a V12. It's pretty much the definition of a supercar. It's also a very, very popular and now somewhat iconic model, now of course that it has been replaced by the Aventador. Now this particular model is the Murcielago, which is probably my personal favourite modern Lamborghini, and it's in my particular favourite version, the LP640. Now we will be reviewing the SV in a future episode, and we have of course already reviewed the Aventador. So how does this car sit between those two vehicles, which are arguably its main rivals, but also the other supercars in the game in general? Because the Murcielago had a pretty good production run, and is a pretty widely loved supercar. It came out at a time when we were getting some fantastic new supercars. Just think of the other vehicles that came out in a similar kind of time to this. We had the SLR, the Enzo, the Carrera GT, the Gumper Apollo, even the Veyron, the bigger, badder Koenigsegg's. It was a good time for supercars. From the year 2000 to say 2010, some amazing vehicles jumped onto the scene, and the Murcielago was one of those. So, what does it have to offer? Well, being a Lambo, it's got some pretty big and impressive numbers. A 6.5 litre V12, which interestingly is naturally aspirated, which I personally am a huge fan of. And despite not having any turbos or superchargers on the game to aid it, it can still put out 928 horsepower, which incidentally is the exact same power as the SV model. Interestingly though, this car actually produces more torque than the SV, at 637 pound-feet, compared to the SV's 608. It does, however, weigh slightly more than the SV, of course, at 1,333 kilos, which is pretty reasonable actually for a supercar, especially an all-wheel drive supercar. And at the end of the day, although this is a more hardcore model of the Murcielago, it's not anywhere near as much of a track day special as the SV. So the fact that it's reasonably light is a good thing, and an impressive thing. The PP, as you'd expect, is lower than the SV at 626, which is pretty much the level you'd expect a supercar like this to sit at, and the price is very good. It's 385,000 credits, which of course is a lot of money, but for a supercar, that actually makes it a really good deal, significantly undercutting something like a Huayra, or an Enzo, or a Veyron, or many others. So it's well priced. It's got some pretty impressive numbers. It puts out just under 700 horsepower per tonne. It's mid-engined and all-wheel drive, and it looks like this. That's a pretty good deal. What about performance though? Because Lamborghinis on Gran Turismo can sometimes be a little bit hit and miss, especially when it comes to top speed and handling. Some of them can be a bit tricky around corners, which lives up to the Lamborghini name. But more importantly, many of them don't achieve the kind of top speeds of many of their rivals, such as the SLR or the Enzo that we mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, the LP640 is one of those vehicles. Now, it's certainly not slow. I don't want to paint a bad picture of this car. It can do just under 280 under its own power, without NOS or slipstream, so as I said, it's certainly no slouch. The acceleration off the line is fantastic due to the all-wheel drive. The acceleration, in fact, through its entire range is very good. It's just not quite as quick as you'd expect a Lamborghini to be. However, it is a good car, especially in a straight line at lower speeds, lower being anything up to, say, 250, which isn't exactly lower, and around the track. Now, on the subject of going around the track, it is to be noted that, like many Lamborghinis, this car can bite. It has very sharp, very focused steering, and can certainly win races, but it's surprisingly slippery for an all-wheel drive car, especially a mid-engined all-wheel drive car. You would think that the mid-engine layout, the naturally aspirated engine, and the all-wheel drive would all combine to make a pretty docile and relatively predictable car, despite being a Lambo. That's not the case. This car can bite. Even with intensive tuning, it can still catch you out, so that is something to be noted. Overall, though, it's a very, very good all-round supercar. It's fantastic to drive, to look at, to listen to, and it's certainly quick. And interestingly, it's not used as much as many of the others, which is a pretty good selling point as well. So, I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.